I hear you. Sorry about the wait, everybody.
No worries. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to say thank you guys for being here. I think we're going to have some people kind of flooding in as we go along, so that's no problem. I wanted to say, just to kind of start off, that if you have any questions along the way of anything we're touching on or speaking about, feel free to just leave them in the Q&A section, and we'll go ahead and try and, if they're related, we'll try and answer them as we go along. If not, we have an allotted 15 minutes towards the end to answer all of your questions. So I'm really excited to be here. I want to first off start by saying thank you to our sponsors, Jane, for sponsoring tonight's panel. This is the first of its kind, and this is actually just being completely transparent and honest. This is the first time I actually host a panel, so I'm very excited, a little bit nervous, so go easy on me, but I think it's going to be great. We are a group of women that wanted to get together and really discuss important topics about just being a woman in business and healthcare and what that takes, the ups, the downs, the challenges, the successes. So I am really excited to hear from all of our panelists today, and I hope you guys are too. So we're gonna start off by just doing a little bit of intro of each of you. So if Roxanne, you could take the floor and just introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Roxanne Francis. I am a psychotherapist and registered social worker in Ontario, and I run a virtual group practice and I support other mental health therapists in the field, and I do organizational consulting on wellness at work. But my passion is psychotherapy. So, and I'm in love with Jane. So.
I think all of us are. Go ahead, Michelle.
So I am an acupuncturist in upstate kind of Western New York. I've been in practice for about 13 years, and my specialty is cosmetic acupuncture, although I also see lots of like pain, digestion, all the classic acupuncture conditions that you'd expect. And I also teach marketing to other acupuncturists. I've been doing that for about 9 years. And I have a podcast called Acupuncture Marketing School.
Love it. Go ahead, Lex.
I'm Lex Lancaster. I am a physical therapist by trade. I owned a private practice in New Hampshire for 2.5 years. And now I live just outside of LA. And my main business, which I opened this business in 2018. So it's been about 5 years since I started this, but I provide executive and creative solutions for health and wellness entrepreneurs. So oftentimes people will say, "What do you do?" I say everything except for Facebook and Google ads. So anything else tech related, I'm your girl. And that's my passion. I absolutely love it. I don't treat at this time. I have fully pulled away from treating and I love it.
I love that. I love that we have a really good mixture of disciplines. I think it just makes for a great conversation, and you guys will all have different perspectives, which is super helpful. So, I will just, before we get started with questions, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Hopkins. I am a chiropractor in Fort Worth, Texas. I actually just moved into a new office space. I went from a 200 square foot little treatment room to now almost 2,000 square feet of space. So it's amazing, overwhelming, still learning, but it's been really great so far. I own a multidisciplinary clinic right now. I am treating at the moment. And then I actually also do social media coaching, which actually, from my experience, helped me build my practice and how I get new patients through the door today. So I do teach other chiropractors, any healthcare professional, but specifically chiropractors, how to do the same. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. We're going to start with the first question, and anyone who wants to jump in first can answer it. So one question that I have for all of you is, can you just truly talk about how you came about or how you chose your profession? I know everyone kind of has a little bit of a story of how they got to where they are. So if you could share that, that would be amazing.
I'll go first because my mic is not on mute. So I was pre-med in undergrad, and I really was not convinced that I wanted to prescribe medication for the rest of my life. And while I was trying to decide what to do, I visited the acupuncture school, which is in my tiny small town. And then my grandmother had a mild stroke, and my aunt brought her for acupuncture. And she was very lucky. Her symptoms were not terrible, but she did regain like complete use of her left hand after getting acupuncture, and that really gave her back her independence, so she could stay at home. She could continue like getting dressed by herself and cooking. And then after that, I was like, forget it. I am not studying for the MCATs. I'm not going to med school. I'm definitely going to acupuncture school. Yeah, it was pretty definitive at that moment.
So cool. I love those stories.
I can go next. So I have kind of a convoluted story, a little bit like Michelle's. I actually was in school for sciences. I was in school in the Caribbean. I was raised in Jamaica, and I was going to school for biochemistry. And after my second year, my family ended up moving to Toronto. And while I was here, while I was trying to figure out my life, maybe I should go back to school for biochemistry. I ended up going to visit Jamaica, and I began to realize that there were some social inequities there. And it kind of, I like to say that my social justice meter, it woke up. And I came back here with a passion to study social work. And I finished my degree, went to grad school, got a job in the community to work for the underdog. And while I was doing some of the community work, I began to realize that I was actually more drawn to the mental health piece. And so I kind of switched focus and wound up in mental health and psychotherapy. And that's where I've been ever since.
That's amazing.
So I also have a convoluted story as such. That's just the way it goes. I was also pre-med like Michelle was. And then halfway through my junior year, I had actually applied early decision to a couple medical schools and I didn't get in, God bless. I wanted to essentially see if it was actually for me. I did a lot of shadowing, probably like Michelle. And I just kept hearing that they wouldn't do it again. So a lot of doctors told me I would not do this again. And I said, oh, this is kind of interesting. And there were multiple different disciplines that I wanted to go into or had considerations for. And they all said they wouldn't do it again. So I said, okay, I think I need to rethink my decision. So I shadowed a bunch of professions, OT, PT, nursing, all the things. And PA was another one. And I loved PT because I was able to follow a patient through their entire plan of care. And I really, really loved that because I like to talk to people. And I find that that was one of the best parts of the job was that I get to actually communicate with humans for a living, essentially, is what we do. And then for my online business, it all sort of happened by accident. I started working for a physical therapist when I was in PT school, just making social media graphics. And then it just kind of took off from there. So I went from social media graphics to now I design all sorts of websites for all sorts of professionals across the world, honestly, at this point, and I absolutely love it. So that all happened by accident.
That's so cool. Everyone has such a unique story. And I know, like, when it comes to choosing a profession, there's always something that happens in your life. I don't think you know. I mean, I know some people who like grow up knowing what they want to do, and that's it. But I don't think you truly know until like this. It's something happens, and you're like, okay, that's the direction I need to get. That like that's my calling. So it's so cool, and it's also cool to see everyone evolve in their professions too. Like you started off with something, and now you're doing something that's kind of complementary to the profession you started with. So that's amazing. My second question is I've been using Jane app for literally a long time now since I started my own practice. I remember being on the hunt for a software and coming across another doctor when I moved here that was using it, and I actually became like her part-time receptionist and started using Jane by accident almost and fell in love with it. It was so user friendly. It was so easy for me to like manipulate and learn really quickly. So I was like, okay, this is like they're onto something. So I want to know since starting my practice, I know that there was features that like I constantly like almost feels like every week that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know about this feature. Like this is so cool. I would love to know how what exactly the features that you find are just like the most amazing for your practice. Anyone can jump in.
We can just keep going in order.
True.
Make it easy. So I hired my first associate acupuncturist about 2 weeks ago, which is incredibly exciting and terrifying, as you can imagine. And I have been so like relieved and impressed about how easy it is to get her started in Jane, where she, like, I set her up with her account and she got all of her own onboarding emails with the videos teaching her how to use it. I fully expected to have to sit down with her and be like, this is how you schedule a person, move them over here. This is how you process payment. But like, she came in for her first day of training and she's like, oh, I got all the Jane emails. I watched all the videos. And then I'm also really appreciating how easy it is for her to have her completely own schedule. And the way that she likes to treat is very different from mine. So she just wants to do one person at a time. She wants to spend 90 minutes with a new patient. I like to treat two people at a time. I only need 60 minutes for a new patient. And it's almost like it's like plug and play, right? Like little building blocks to put together the schedule so that we're both very happy. We're like in our own little worlds, but still sharing the software. So right now, that's what I'm enjoying the most.
For me, um, I think it has changed for me over time. When we first started, when I was bringing people on team, I think that was the same thing as Michelle. That was my favorite thing, just how easy it was for people to train in terms of learning how to use Jane. But I think for me right now, the thing that I'm loving about Jane is the reports feature. I am now a person all about the numbers. I want to see the statistics. I want to see where we were last year and where we were now. And, what month did our numbers go down and what month did our numbers go up and what was happening during that time, which associate is full and which associate is not full. I love that reports tab. I can find so many things on there, who saw this many clients this month and who saw it just reduces the amount of time that I have to sit with a spreadsheet or my pen and my notebook and my calculator. I just click on that reports tab and I can just find just about anything, any statistic that I need about my practice, about my clinic, I can find it there. So that's my favorite thing by far right now.
For me, I would say in practice, it was wonderful to have the customer support. So I actually did not start with Jane app. We switched from a different software and it was such a relief to be on Jane. And after being a travel PT and working on multiple other platforms, I can confidently say that Jane is the best. It's absolutely amazing. And then my other big thing that makes my clients' lives easier, and also when I was, obviously doing things for our practice, is the disciplines feature and how amazing it can work for online booking. I love that we can separate out a discovery call into its own separate discipline so that when someone goes to the online booking page, it's super easy for them to book and not have to search through a bunch of different, am I a new patient evaluation? Am I a follow-up? Like, we don't know. So I love that we can separate different treatments out into disciplines. I think it's a very key feature that they have, and it's amazing.
I can completely agree with you on the customer service piece. I know that just quickly, because I love Jane so much, I want to share my favorite. When I first, I was a solo provider for a long time. So I was wearing all the hats, doing everything. And I know you guys could probably relate. And so having that almost like they were like almost like just a partner that I can have to call up and they would answer right away and you're talking to a real person. And it just felt so like comforting to know that I had that option when I needed something like a quick fix or to figure out something, even while the patient was there, so it's just top tier. I just love it so much. So I'm glad you guys love it too. My next question is being a businesswoman can be super tough. Sometimes you can feel like there is no balance and you're always thinking about work at home and at work. How do you all find the balance between work and home life?
So I feel like I have not always been very good at this. And something that I really struggle with is keeping to my schedule that I set for myself. Like if I say I'm going to be done at 6, at this point I'm much better about it. But in the past, if someone needed me to stay until like 6:30 or 7, sometimes I would be like, oh, okay. But then I would feel very stressed and I would have to skip like working out or cooking dinner or something like that. So for me, the balance is really about going home when I say I'm going to go home and then not doing any work once I'm home, right? Like that 6 p.m. and past is time to go grocery shopping or run errands, lift weights, cook dinner, but not log back onto my computer because it's very tempting. But that has helped a lot.
For me, I find, and again, not that I'm at the best, I'm not the best at it just yet. It's a work in progress. But you know, I have a busy household. I have a parent that lives in my home. I have a partner. I have 2 little children. Um, but I live by my calendar. And so anything that I'm doing throughout the day, it needs to be in the calendar. If I'm taking a break, it needs to be in the calendar. And I block that off and I put break and I put do not remove because otherwise it's just an empty space. And we know how, you know, what's the saying? Something about hates a void. The environment hates a void or something like that. My calendar hates a void. And so if it's blank, then someone's just going to want to slot themselves in. You know, here's a meeting, here's this thing that you can do, here's a client. And I'm not doing that. So I block it off. I put break, I put do not remove, do not book. And I take my lunches and I go outside and I go for walks. And, you know, my children roll off the bus at 3:30 and they get home and I work from home and they think that when they get home, my day is done. So I am mindful to take a break for when they get home from school and I hang out with them in the kitchen. And then they know that I have one more client to work with and then I'm done. And so I schedule it in. I just use my calendar to that advantage and I live by that. And I also, because work gets busy, being an entrepreneur doesn't really end. And so I try to make sure to put fun things in my life that will create a little bit of counter pressure, right? To help create some of that balance, the laughter, the music, the creativity, all that stuff.
So along the same lines, I also rely very heavily on my calendar, and I've learned the hard way, very much so the hard way, that you have to schedule in your fun first. So I will schedule in life and then schedule work around life. And I'm very, very stringent about saying no outside of those boundaries because, like Michelle and Roxanne both expressed, I was not the best at that for probably a year straight, and I felt the effects of it. So at this point, there's still some times where I'm like, oh, maybe I could, but I really, really am very stringent about the fact that like this is work and this is play, and scheduling in the play first is always a priority for me, and then work around that.
I love that. I love that. I do the exact same. My next question is, running your own business is super difficult. How do you guys keep it running? Like, how do you all keep patients coming through the door? Is there anything that you specifically to get new patients? Let us know it all.
So I think like all of us, I really love marketing. So I love all the ideas that are out there. The things that I find work the best for me and my community right now are attending Chamber of Commerce meetings regularly. I'm such an introvert. I find it very difficult, even though everyone's so nice there every week. I'm like, it works. If they send patients, I'm going to go. So that is really helpful. Being really consistent on Instagram has been helpful, especially for cosmetic acupuncture, seems to do very well, the visual aspect of Instagram. I am working with someone else for the first time ever to run Google retargeting ads because I've tried to run them in the past, but they're just very complex. So I'm looking forward to learning from her as we go along. And then of course, referrals are always pretty consistent.
Yes, so marketing is key 100%. I get into the networking piece, like Michelle said, the Chamber of Commerce, but I also, um, you know, businesswomen meetings, summits, different activities that actually get me in front of people. I'm not necessarily a social butterfly, but I enjoy making relationships with people. And so I just establish real connection. And then once you become a real connection, you stay top of mind for people. I'm also consistent on Instagram, but also on LinkedIn. I do a lot of networking on LinkedIn as well. And what else? In terms of managing my business and keep clients coming back, um, the administrative support that I have is also key. They are their own individual, but there is a general warmth that we try to exude in the clinic that we run. And so, they are all an extension of me. And so they're just as warm and friendly, even in email. And so that makes a huge difference, and it keeps people coming back, and people like to refer. My colleagues who are doing different kinds of work are always referring clients, and we cross-refer to each other. So that's key as well.
So for starting the physical therapy practice in New Hampshire, the biggest thing was word of mouth and literally just getting your shoes on the pavement. We went business to business, talking to all the people, attending all the things, and then really relied on word of mouth marketing. We were slow for a long time, but my business partner and I, we had income coming in from other places. So we were not urgent in our business development, which felt really, really good inside. We did not need to have someone buy a patient package. Like, we could turn them away if they weren't a good fit. And that was always a really good feeling. And those people would always refer their friends because they're like, they told me not to come because I wasn't a good fit. Go see them. They'll let you know. So that was very, very helpful. And, from there, we really took on to SEO and being able to be found on Google. So when people actually Google the service that we provide in our area, we were coming up. We had been ranking 1, 2, and 3 for most things that we did within, I would say, probably a 30-mile radius ish. And then that's what really prompted me within my digital business to then talk about SEO and help my clients with SEO, because I know how big of a deal it is. But I will always, always stay and die on the hill that word of mouth marketing is the absolute best. It is the best. It's the gold standard. But obviously, we can't talk to everyone, and everyone can't always talk to everyone. And people are always going to Google their problems. So that's where we took our routes next.
That is true for sure. My next question is, owning your own business can come with a lot of benefits, but it also can come with some challenges. So what are the 3 biggest challenges of being in business, and how have you overcome them?
So we already discussed that sometimes those boundaries are hard. So I would say in the beginning of my practice, it was certainly keeping the boundaries for the amount of time that I was supposed to be in the office. I opened this current location about 10 months before COVID hit. And so, as everyone experienced, COVID was such a challenge, like rebuilding once we were allowed to be in person again. And then the third challenge, let me see, I brainstormed because I knew I wouldn't remember. Oh, I must have deleted it. But I feel like the last challenge was feeling like I was stepping on the toes of established practitioners in like nearby towns. But cosmetic acupuncture is so unique. I really wanted to do some marketing and advertising in those areas, but was worried that they would feel like I was encroaching on their space. And over time, I realized that, they don't own those patients, right? They don't own that area of town. And not everybody in that area is necessarily the perfect fit for them, just like the people in my town are not always the perfect fit for me. So I decided to really get brave and just start marketing in those areas and sort of see what happened. And The other acupuncturists were, first of all, very gracious. So it was kind of silly to worry about them being upset with me for kind of showing up in their space. And they also really stepped up their own marketing game because I was sort of presenting a like a friendly challenge from their perspective. And so it kind of like made us all better, right? So they kind of really dug in with the sort of patients they wanted and the marketing that they were doing. And we do frequently refer to each other. So I kind of feel like it's helpful for new practitioners to remember that, you know, just because someone's been in practice for a decade, it doesn't mean that they own that part of the city. And you can also, you know, collaborate with them, and it'll sort of end up being a beautiful thing. You're not stepping on their toes.
In terms of challenges, I think for me, the challenge was learning how to run a business, right? I went to school for, you know, psychotherapy and social work, and they teach you how to, you know, do the mental health piece of the work. They teach you how to help people with anxiety and depression, but nobody tells you, I mean, you start a business and you don't know anything about profit and loss, right? You don't know anything about the nuts and bolts, the ins and outs, the marketing, all those things I had to learn on the fly while I was actively treating clients. So that was challenging. The best thing I did for myself was hire a business and branding coach. She really, really changed everything for me. She gave me homework and I just did everything that she told me to do. I just did it. And it really helped establish me as a leader in my industry. It helped me with the word of mouth marketing. It helped me with social media marketing. It helped me get in the news media. And you know, I run a conference now for therapists in my area, and it has just put me out there in terms of, you know, you need to see a therapist, you need to go find Roxanne. And so that has really, really helped. I think as well, I think one thing that really tripped me up for a little while was a bit of the comparison trap. When I was new on the scene in terms of having my own practice, I was a therapist for a while working for agencies. But when I became a therapist, I just felt, when I became a business owner, rather, I just felt like, I just felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And, you know, that it messed with my self-esteem a little bit because I was looking at other people who seemed like they knew what they were doing. And I fell for a little bit into that comparison trap. But as I kind of found my footing, and I found community, right? I just reached my hands out and I started talking and connecting with other mental health therapists and realizing that I wasn't alone. One good thing is finding community and finding community with like-minded therapists and therapists who were maybe a couple steps ahead. That was a really big help for me. When you feel like you're alone, you feel like you're the only one making this mistake, you're the only one who has the struggle, and you feel like you are the problem. But community helps you realize that, you know, it's not you. Maybe it's the system. Maybe it's just the role, you know, the experience of the entrepreneur. This will happen when you're in about your third year. This is going to happen when you start to scale. This is what's going to happen when you start to bring on team and you begin to realize that it's just a part of the journey, and that, you know, you're not the problem.
That was so good. It's hard to follow you too. So I have 3 written down because, like Michelle's, like, I knew I will forget them. So my first one is that you're the boss, so you have to make a conscious effort to be a good boss to yourself. And that's really, really hard to learn because you oftentimes leave a business owner who is your boss to become your own boss. And then sometimes you look up and you're like, I'm being a bad boss to myself. I left bad for bad. So you have to be a good boss to yourself. My second one is you have full control over what you do and don't do. And at first that can be really, really scary and hard. But once you learn your no, it's the most powerful thing in the world. because you get to decide what you do or don't do. And in this world, there are a lot of people, like Michelle was saying, there are people that are not going to be your people and vice versa. And when you learn that, it's so, so powerful. And my last thing is resisting the urge for what's next and feeling comfortable with sitting in the this is really good. Because as a business owner, you always want to say, okay, so I'm here. What's next? And like, what else can I do? And sometimes it's really, really tough to just sit there and look around and say, you know what? Like, I'm pretty good right now. Let's just coast. And I think it's something that we all go through because that's how our mind works. If you're a business owner, your mind is always working. You're trying to come up with business ideas. And it's just hard to take a step back and sit in the this is good for a little bit.
All of you made such great points. Like, I'm inspired. I have to agree with everybody. I think that one great point is that, we're not, unless you come from a family of entrepreneurs, business owners, we're not taught that. We don't know what to do coming out. We know we have the skill, we know how to be a doctor, but we don't necessarily know how to be the business owner. And I think that that's okay. But I think what's important is to realize that and to go after a mentor and find a coach and find yourself a circle that has that skill set so that you can kind of position yourself in a place where you can advance and learn. And it's okay to fail. I think I failed a million times before I've had a success. So you learn from those. We fail forward, like Denzel says. So I have another question for you guys. If someone listening wanted to in the near future start a business, what kind of advice would you give them? Like, what's the most important advice you would give them?
The first thing that I always recommend to my marketing students is to find some kind of mentor. Like, I think Roxanne mentioned, like, it's so nice to have someone who's just a couple steps ahead of you. Like, they don't have to be like a decade or two in practice. They certainly can be, but just someone who has walked the road before you, who can sort of keep you calm and remind you, like, okay, this is normal. It's not you. Like Roxanne said, this is literally just the part of the entrepreneurship journey that you've arrived at right now. So I think that having a mentor that you can meet with, even just monthly, is really nice to get that feedback and to keep you encouraged and accountable as well. And I also always tell my students to experiment with their marketing. And of course, when I think of experimentation with marketing, I'm thinking of the things that are free or low cost, right? So it's not like they're breaking the bank experimenting with like Google ads when they're brand new. But you should really spend some time doing all different kinds of marketing to get visible in your community so that you can decide what feels really good to you and is actually working to bring in new patients. Because I think a lot of practitioners feel like marketing can be intimidating or feel kind of gross, or they're worried it will feel gross, but they don't know that there are different avenues that they could choose that might be a really good fit for their personality. And I always think that the more you like a marketing avenue, the more likely it is that you'll show up regularly, which is very important for getting good results in marketing. Like, you have to be consistent. So you never have to continue doing marketing that you hate. Like, if you are doing something and you're like, this is such a bad fit for my personality, you don't have to keep doing it. You can experiment with something else. So I always feel like if I were to start over, I wish someone had told me those two things right in the beginning. Get a mentor right off the bat, and then just experiment with getting visible in your community and the ways that make you really comfortable.
I love all of those, Michelle. I'm making all these notes. Y'all are so brilliant. So what I would say to someone starting out is trust yourself, trust your instincts, and listen to your body. Trust that, like, trust how you feel. We live in such a world where there's so much distraction that we never really, we don't really tune into us. Am I overwhelmed? Am I tired? What is my gut telling me about this situation? Should I go forward with that, even though everyone's telling me not to? Everyone thinks it's a bad idea, but I just know that it's a good idea. Who do I listen to? So trust yourself. I have to agree with Michelle. Find a mentor, find a coach immediately, someone who will pour into you, guide you, give you direction, tell you whether or not it's you or it's just the road that you're on. And also, two more things. One, you know when you buy a brand new car, or you get a new car, a model that you hadn't driven before, and suddenly you're seeing it everywhere, and you think, there's so many of these cars everywhere. How come I didn't see that yet? When you are leaning into your business as an entrepreneur, you'll suddenly look up and see so many people doing the same thing, and you will think that the market is oversaturated. It isn't. The market isn't oversaturated. Walk down the grocery store aisle and look at how many brands of water, right? Not even drinks, water. And also the bread aisle. There's one for everybody, and they're all selling to different people. Lean into what makes you different. That's what's going to cause you to stand out. Don't think that the market's oversaturated, and don't use that as an excuse to not show up. So that's what I would say.
So good. I love these. My first one is, if you never ask, the answer will always be no. A mentor of mine had told me that when I was still in PT school, and that was how I originally got started in my online business, because I asked the question. I said, "Can I work for you?" Like, not hiring, there was no sign, but if you never ask, the answer will always be no. And you don't be afraid to get creative with that. I mean, there are a lot of questions that we asked a lot of people, like, can we set up in your space? We know you've never done it before, but would you let us do this? Here's a plan. They said yes. Like, there are small opportunities everywhere. And if you just ask the question, it will present itself. And usually it's a yes. And we always shy ourselves away from asking. So it's always going to be no. My other one is, don't burn the ships. So if you are someone who's looking to start a business, it is so much easier to start a business when you have money coming in from elsewhere. It allows you to remove the urgency that I talked about. Urgency is really, really tough to get around, and it causes you to lose sleep at night. And the thing is when you can remove urgency from your business, you can show up in a better way, especially in the beginning. And, you're not losing dinner, right? So money is real. And I think it's one of the toughest things to talk about as a business owner. Money is a thing. And when you are able to have money coming in as you're starting a business, everything feels much better. It just feels less stressful. There's less pressure. You don't have to make it work. And when you do fail, it's not the end of the world. So for me, it's just, don't burn the ships. See how you can start doing things for your own business, but under someone else's dime while you're doing it.
Amazing. I don't think, Lex, we hear that enough. I think we just think, okay, we're going to be in debt. Like, let's just dive in and see what happens type of thing and just deal with that. But you're so right. Like, different streams of income is super important. I have to add to this conversation because it's so good. And you guys had so many good points. I think that mindset is everything. I think that if you're shooting yourself in the foot from the moment you get up in the morning, you're setting yourself up for failure. You have to have the mindset that you have the skill, you know what to do. And like Roxanne said, trust yourself, trust your gut. You're there for a reason. And if you have the passion and the heart behind what you do, that's just going to speak for itself, and you're going to be successful in what you do. So I think that a lot of, especially just speaking as a practitioner, a lot of practitioners, I feel like like Lex mentioned earlier, that part of like communicating with a patient or a client is like the best part. And I think that what I hear most often is that, wow, no one ever spent 60 minutes with me for a new patient appointment. Like, I can't go anywhere where I feel like the doctor's actually listening. It's usually just in and out. So you know what to do. You have the skill. The business skills will come as you go. But one thing I will say is, invest in yourself. Invest in a coach, invest in a mentor. Doesn't mean I have to spend tons of money. Go to seminars, conferences, free workshops, find those groups that are doing those things, and just as much knowledge and education you can get, the better. But I will end this with one last question. I want to know what's next for all of you. Where can people follow you, and where can we kind of stay in touch?
So my plans, and I mentioned I'm nervous about having an associate for the first time, right? I'm also just very, very excited. I love marketing so much. I know it's pretty unusual in the acupuncture world to love acupuncture and marketing. So I am really excited to focus all of my marketing energy on building the practice for my associate, and then being able to report back on, what we did this month that worked, what didn't work on the podcast. It's called Acupuncture Marketing School, because I found that, I love the beautiful notes that I get over email when someone listens to a podcast and puts into practice something that was discussed, like if whether a guest brought it on or I mentioned it. It's amazing when people say, I tried what you suggested and it worked. Like I got 3 new patients. So I just am so looking forward to that beautiful system of marketing in real time for my practice, for someone else who has, she has her own target market and ideal patient avatar, and just kind of working all of that up for her and seeing how it goes. I'm incredibly excited for that. So my website where people can find the podcast is michellegrassick.com. And I also have an online program called Acupuncture Marketing School, because I thought it would be easy to Google to have them named the same thing. Like it's definitely not confusing, right? It's confusing. So there's a podcast, and then there's Acupuncture Marketing School, the online program, sort of walks acupuncturists through, or any healthcare providers really, the marketing skills we should have learned in school, but we know there simply is not enough time, right? Because we're learning the profession itself. And so those are both available on michellegrassick.com.
That's awesome. For me, as I mentioned before, part of the work that I do is that I support other mental health clinicians in the field. I have a course that I teach called Private Practice Jumpstart VIP Day, where we spend a full day together, either virtually or in person, but mostly virtually. And we go through all of the things people who are brand new out of school who are wanting to start their business. We go from, setting up your business, going to the bank, how to set your fees, where and how to market, make sure you sign up with Jane, all the things that you need, how to know when you need to bring on team, how to hire an assistant, like all these pieces. So we do that all day, and we send people off, but they come back after a little while and they get a little bit of support as they implement. The next thing, so I also offer a conference for psychotherapists in the Ontario area. It's once a year. It's called the Therapist Lounge. And we provide wellness support as well as business support. So all of the business people that I have met and have built relationships with, they come back just as a favor to me. And, from finance to PR to, different streams of income, chiropractors, massage therapists, and we just take care of the practitioner themselves. Because oftentimes when they go to conferences, it's about how to take care of the patient, right? So this conference is about taking care of the practitioner. So that's how I support the mental health therapist community. And you can find more about me on the website, which is francispsychotherapy.com. And you can follow me on socials at Francis Psychotherapy.
So I am going to be trying to do more of what I've been doing, trying to sit in the it's okay. But what's next? I actually run an SEO school for health and wellness practitioners. So my SEO school opens for registration at the end of the month. So I'm in the middle of what I call my launch period. So I'm very active on Instagram. So that is Lex Lancaster _. And then Jane also graciously sponsors my podcast Up in My Business. So I have to also say, please go listen to that. I give away so many free tips. Just like Michelle was saying, I love those emails where you get, people say, oh my God, I did this one thing that you mentioned on the podcast. I'm like, you're listening to the podcast. This is amazing. Thank you so much. Because you're in people's ears, and that's very much so. I don't take that for granted that people take the time to listen to the podcast. So if you want to learn more about me, I do life updates, business updates, and then tech stuff. So if you want to get a little nerdy, that's where you can find me. Otherwise, my website is www.lexlancaster.com.
Love it. Love it. Thank you guys so much. I have to say, Lex, you have a very podcast voice. I don't know if you've heard that before, but I don't know if it's the mic, but it works. I have to mention, thank you again so much, Jane, for sponsoring tonight's panel discussion. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here. And thank you to the panelists for being here and sharing so much knowledge. Like, this conversation it just needed to be had, and it was everything and more. I enjoyed it so much. So thank you guys so much. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Make sure you connect with each and every one of these beautiful ladies. They have so much, like, they have a wealth of knowledge. So make sure you do connect. If you want to follow my journey, I'm at the Chiropractic Guru on Instagram and TikTok. And I also do social media coaching if you are interested in just gaining more presence online and building your practice through social media. So I hope you guys have a beautiful night, and we hope to do this again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.